Chairman, Administrator Milgram, I just wanted to follow up on my colleague, Mr. Morelli's questions and express appreciation as a representative of communities in New York City, Queens specifically, appreciation on the many ways that the DEA partners with our state and New York City local law enforcement agencies to take guns off our streets and to make our communities safer. I'm also proud of how the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which President Biden signed into law in 2022, has empowered law enforcement and the courts to hold firearms traffickers responsible. As you know well, this act created the first federal criminal offense for firearms trafficking. I was glad to see that the DEA had worked with NYPD to dismantle a gun trafficking operation in Brooklyn. In March of this year, the defendants pleaded guilty to multiple charges related to the distribution of fentanyl and firearms trafficking. This case became one of the first cases in the country to use the provision of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act that made trafficking a criminal offense in federal law, which makes a huge difference in a city like New York, where the overwhelming majority of crime guns were last sold from a licensed dealer from another state. Administrator, can you speak to how these provisions of this bill, this act, support the work that your agents are doing to take guns off our streets and reduce violent crime? And how is the DEA allocating resources to coordination efforts with local and state law enforcement to crack down on interstate, interjurisdiction firearms trafficking?
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. DEA, we are focused relentlessly on drug trafficking and particularly on the fentanyl threat. That said, we have been doing extensive work around violence in our communities because we know the intersection between drugs and violence. They're inextricably intertwined. And so we do work around Operation Overdrive, as you heard earlier. We also seize an enormous amount of illegal firearms as part of our law enforcement work across the United States. Last year, I think we seized more than 8,200 firearms as part of our operations. So we also partner very closely with all of the DOJ components, the FBI, ATF, Marshals. And in New York City, as you know, the ATF hosts a daily meeting with NYPD, with federal law enforcement. Prosecutors are in that room, state and federal, and they're talking about, who are the individuals that are likely to be the next shooters, and really focused on, how do they stop the threat of violence on the streets. And so DEA has a regular presence. We're at that meeting every single day. We have deep partnerships across the United States with our state and local law enforcement counterparts. And again, our main focus is on drugs, but we are absolutely working on violent crime in communities and very strongly working in partnership. And one of the most important things, I think, is those partnerships, because we call upon one another when we can, be proactive in stopping the next crime from happening, or when we need to, investigate and prosecute something that has already happened.